Guest tonight was awarded the Public Safety Medal of Valor by President Trump back in 2018 for his heroic actions that helped to save the life of a motorist who was trapped inside of a burning car. He's been a first responder EMT and now a frontline doctor in the battle against COVID-19. Joining us, Sean Ochsenbein. Doc,
to be here, Dan.
How you doing? Nice to see you.
Doing great. I'm healthy, and I'm happy to be here to talk about the president's recovery and moving forward.
So glad you could join us. Let's talk about, we've got some video I think we pulled up of that day because I want to kind of set the stage for who you are as a guy, as a person, as an American and a patriot, and what I would consider a hero, because a lot of folks don't rush in towards the danger when things happen. A lot of folks just stand around and take video to post on social media. But Doc, this was a couple years ago. You were on vacation, I understand, and there was a head-on collision. Take it from there.
It was a head-on collision. It was an unfortunate incident that occurred. It just so happened that I was there with another off-duty officer. I had the prior training of EMS with vehicle extrication that kind of married up perfectly, where we were able to rescue an individual from a fire that was, a car that was on fire. And because of those actions, I was able to go to the White House and meet the president. So I was quite blessed and very lucky. There's lots of heroes out there doing these actions every day, and I was just lucky enough to be able to be recognized for it and bring a little light down upon the rescue squad and EMS there in Tennessee.
Yeah, and let's throw that out there, too. There is a lot of that going on every single day, a lot of it done by law enforcement officers who are getting the raw end of the stick these days. Right, Doc?
That's right, particularly right now. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's fast forward to today. EMT, first responder, now doctor. You've been dealing with this stuff on the front lines. We just saw the president make a really quick recovery. Let's talk about these therapeutics that he's using and how he was able to get out of Walter Reed in just 3 days.
Absolutely. First off, Dr. Connolly's done an amazing job. He pulled together an all-star team there at Walter Reed, and I think the American people can see that the therapeutics that we're, creating here in the United States, thanks to the president putting significant effort into making sure that happens. We're now seeing patients, their death rate is declining across the United States for COVID. And we're seeing people that are, kind of coming out of the worst symptoms sooner. So as you can see, the president was on a cocktail of medications, and a lot of people kind of wonder what those are. But, a virus can be attacked by medications and therapeutics by many different ways. And you can see that by the steroids, as well as the remdesivir and the Regeneron that he was given. So all of this coming together, plus, the president is quite healthy. A lot of people, don't realize that. For someone that's 74 years old, you look at the kind of pace that he does every day, the amount of travel that he does, and he's doing long-winded speeches almost daily compared to other people that are running for president right now. And look how fast he was able to get back out of the hospital, walk up those flight of stairs, and stand there last night proud that he's back home and recovering.
Yeah, and of course the media attacking him for that, for even just leaving the hospital so soon, of course for taking the mask off and just getting the virus all together. Attacks. But we won't go there. I've got other guests for that, Doc. I'm going to stay on the COVID beat with you because that's what you do every day. What have you been seeing? You've been treating patients since day one. Are we talking like March, April timeframe when you saw your first patients with COVID?
Absolutely. That's right. Day one, we were treating COVID on the front lines in the emergency department, in the ICUs across the country. And I can tell you that we've learned a lot. One thing about having a novel virus that we've never seen before is we have to be cautious about therapeutics that we initiate on patients because we don't want to cause harm. We want to make people better. And one thing that the United States has been really good at is staying on the front and cutting edge of technology that's coming on to combat this virus. So since we've been treating virus and I've been treating COVID in the emergency department, I have changed my practice multiple times based on research and recommendations from the White House as well as the CDC and the amazing team that he put together to give us recommendations on how to best treat patients.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the drugs a minute ago. We had a doctor on from Texas, I believe last week on the show, that talked about the hydroxychloroquine and the say that one for me, Doc, so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, dexamethasone or Decadron.
Right.
That's right.
So some of this stuff is for pre-COVID, and some of it is a therapeutic for once you definitely have it, and then some is if it's more full-blown, right? There's kind of different stages and different therapies you use if you're just trying to ward it off or if you just contracted it and you just tested positive, but you're not maybe showing that big of signs yet like the president was. Or this doctor had said on Friday, if folks are full blown, they're in the intensive care, he had a cocktail recipe he was using, and he had over 1,000 patients heal. And some of them were cancer survivors. One gal, I believe he said she was 65, had lung cancer before, and he got her totally cured out of the ICU and is back home. So there are remedies, there's therapeutics, there's medicines out there that if given at the right time in the right doses can work, correct?
That's right. That's right. And I'm not surprised of the president's quick recovery. I mean, think about it. There's probably no one on the face of the earth that is followed more closely than the president of the United States. You know, when they picked up on that he was a little fatigued, maybe a little short of breath, they immediately initiated protocols to get him the best treatment in the United States, as he should as president. And you can see the quick recovery. But Dan, you're exactly right. There's multiple things that you can do to kind of help your immune system. You can see that the president was on zinc, vitamin D. He was on Pepsid. You know, these are kind of alternative therapies that can augment the immune system, that help it fight the virus on the front end. Definitely making sure you're not low in these vitamins, in these essential nutrients that your immune system needs. And then, of course, he was on the medications to fight the virus, which he actively had, which was of course, the remdesivir, which stops viral replication in the cell. And then, of course, the Regeneron, which is going to kind of kickstart the immune system. So as you can imagine, he's infected with the virus. The body really hasn't seen this before, of course, because it's new. We need time to build those antibodies to be able to sequester the virus and make sure it doesn't enter the cell. Regeneron seems to be, based on the trial that came out last week and the president's recovery, of course, an N of 1, that it seems to be doing that. It seems to be kickstarting the immune system and getting people to have a faster recovery.
Doc, does it normally take this long to figure? I mean, this was a new virus, something that we'd never dealt with before, I get that. So does it take this long typically? Or because there was so much pushback from the mainstream media and from the left saying, nope, this stuff isn't working months ago, don't do that, don't listen to the president, especially, we know, of course, on hydroxychloroquine, that was brought up way, way long ago, and some of these other drugs just more recently. Do you think that pushback had something to do with this? Or because this isn't something we need clinical trials for, these drugs and therapeutics are already on the market. Some, in instances, they've been out for decades, correct?
Absolutely. And there's a big difference between starting a medication that is an over-the-counter vitamin versus having to go to a physician for a prescription. And I think one thing that's important is that you can either look at the treatment that we have in a positive light or a negative light. And the way you look at what we're doing for patients and how they're responding is important. And sadly, you know, there's certain agencies within the news out there that only want to talk about the negative stories. They don't want to really mention any of the positive advances that we've had in the country in combating COVID.
Yeah. Finally, Doc, I want to wrap it up with your message to the American people. You've been on the front lines. Should folks, and I don't want this to sound light or to put it lightly, because folks should take this very, very seriously. It is a deadly virus. But compared to the hype that it has been blown up to be since March by the mainstream media, and now used as, I would say personally, a political weapon during a presidential campaign. Let's be real. If this was 2-3 years ago, it'd be a different story about how COVID is covered by the media and what Democrats are saying. We might even have a united front if it was 2-3 years ago with people coming together. Maybe. I can hope and pray for that, right? Yep. But do you feel, and your final thoughts and words here, on what the American people should be feeling moving forward? They just saw their president, a 74-year-old man who, let's face it, eats some McDonald's once in a while.
Don't we all?
You were bragging up his shape. He's in okay. I wouldn't put him at a 10, but he's in okay shape. And he literally kicked its butt in 3 days thanks to these therapeutics. He's back to work. What would your advice be for the American people moving forward with this virus?
Absolutely. First off, I think they should be proud of the United States physicians and healthcare organizations across the country. We've worked tirelessly to make sure that when someone comes in through our doors in the United States into a hospital, that we are up to date on the research and we're ready to treat them for COVID and make sure that they have the best likelihood to succeed. I will say that most people right now just need to employ common sense. if you're over the age of 60 and you have multiple comorbidities, you're obese, you have hypertension, COPD, you have cardiac disease, it's probably not the best idea to go to a fundraiser or a bar, meet 100 people, shake their hand, and talk to them within a foot, right? I think anybody would agree with that. But if you're a young person that has no comorbidities, there's no reason for you to also stay locked in your basement. So being able to kind of have a happy medium, understand what your risk factors are for contracting the disease, and not only contracting it, but having a serious case of the disease that equals hospitalization is something every single person needs to take the responsibility for and make the right decision for them to do, and not have some outside entity tell them what to do.
There you go. Dr. Sean Ochsenbein, thank you so much. Very eye-opening. I love that you just put everything nice and simple context and lay it out there for folks. Doc, we may call on you again. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Sounds great, Dan. Thanks a lot.
In other headlines, the Commission on Presidential Debates releasing new rules for tomorrow night's vice presidential debate. Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris are going to go face-to-face at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, but they will be separated 12 feet away, and also they're adding plexiglass dividers. The new rules created after the president, of course, tested positive for coronavirus last week. They'll ensure that the moderator, Susan Page, and candidates are socially distanced, all well far apart from each other, and everyone in there is going to be tested for the virus before tomorrow night. Vice President Mike Pence and VP nominee Kamala Harris will also forego any pre-debate handshakes. They're not being rude, they're just being safe. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow night. Myself, along with Greta Wall, Alex Selvey, and John Hines and Chanel Rion will be covering pre and post live debate right here on OAN. Well, still think that voter fraud doesn't exist at all, whether it be one vote or 1,000? We've given you several examples over the last 2 weeks to show you that it actually does happen. Well, here's another one. Of course, this one got caught. A man in Bradenton, Florida, busted after he tried to obtain a mail-in ballot for his dead wife. Manatee County Supervisor of Elections Mike Bennett says that his staff reviewed the mail-in ballot request on the voter rolls. They do it for every single ballot, and they found out this guy's wife had been deceased for 2 years. Now, Mr. Wiggins was arrested on voter fraud. He informed the deputies, though, get this, he just wanted to test the system. The Manatee County Supervisor of Elections has announced they will prosecute him and anyone else who attempts voter fraud. All right, oops, he did it. Okay, I can't sing. Oops, he did it again. Biden in hot water once again for racist comments. That's right, Uncle Joey makes them. You probably didn't see it, though, in the mainstream media. In fact, the comments were made a couple of weeks ago, but are finally getting attention online today. Now, just on Monday, Turning Point USA senior contributor Rob Smith magnified and posted it out there, blew it out there, a statement that Biden said back on September 15th. This was during a roundtable discussion with veterans in Florida. Biden always seems to call the president a racist all the time. But you know what? Maybe he's just covering up for his own actions. But I'm going to let you decide. So take a look and a listen to what Mr. Biden said.
Geez, the reason I was able to stay sequestered in my home is because some black woman was able to stack the grocery shelf.
Only black people work in service industries like grocery stores, Joe? Kind of like when you made that comment a while back about poor kids, of color, and how many other comments. Now, can you imagine if a Republican or the president made a comment like that? Just pause for a minute and think about it. The lamestream media wouldn't let it slide. You know they wouldn't. So why are they letting Biden get away with this? Remember, that comment, September 15th. Remember before that? What did Joe say just about a month and a half ago? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Well, now we know. He said all that stuff. He has a history of making racial slurs, but he refuses to admit it. So we thought we would show you just a few of Uncle Joey's racist remarks. Roll it.
So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
He did a crime bill 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country.
And let's not forget, he didn't say it on camera, but it was in print in a news article, I believe in the late 70s, early 80s, where he talked about the segregating and integration of schools, calling them a racial jungle. So there you go. You just heard it right out of his mouth. All right, as we all know in the industry, anything can happen on live TV. I've been in the biz for over 20 years, and let me tell you, I've had my fair share of jumbling words, which I think I just did tonight, maybe making a mistake or two. We all do it. Nobody's perfect. So I understand how every now and then an anchor or a TV host can have a slip-up. And some blunders are pretty funny, right? They end up just going viral. So the other night, a veteran New York news anchor named Pat Kernan was reporting that White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany had tested positive for the coronavirus. So he accidentally went into Joe Biden mode and declared that Kayleigh tested positive for something else. Take a look.
The White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany has said in the last few minutes that she has tested positive for COVID-19. In her explanation of what's happened over the past few days, she said she had repeatedly tested negative, but just today has tested positive. Another member of Donald Trump's inner circle testing positive for cocaine. The White House press secretary says she will be working remotely after facing, she's tested positive for COVID, Kayleigh McEnany.
I don't even think he realized he said she tested positive for cocaine. Someone actually had to tell him to correct himself. Anyway, just had to share with you. Could have been a Freudian slip, could have been on purpose. Who knows? We don't know which way he leans, which actually is pretty good because most anchors these days, you know which way they go, right? Left or right, which is not a journalist. Again, this is a talk show, folks. I try to point that out all the time. That's why you do get some opinion. And so when you're watching television news out there or shows, make sure you know who's acting and supposed to be a journalist and who just claims they are a host or a commentator. Big differences, although nowadays they kind of blend, don't they? Coming up after the break, Trump ally and confidant Roger Stone returns to Real America. You don't want to miss this interview. We'll be back in 2 minutes.